A billionaire laughed, while food dripped from a black woman's ruined jacket in front of an entire ballroom. He thought he had embarrassed a powerless stranger, but within minutes, his laughter would turn to fear, because the woman standing before him wasn't ordinary. She was the one person who controlled his billion-dollar future. Rain hammered against the glass walls of Chicago's most luxurious hotel as the city's richest people gathered beneath sparkling chandeliers. Inside the Grand Crescent Hotel, money ruled everything. Politicians smiled for cameras. Investors whispered secret deals. And billionaires walked like kings. But no king ruled the room more proudly than Victor Langston. Powerful, arrogant, untouchable. For years, Victor built his empire by crushing competition and humiliating anyone he considered beneath him. People admired his success, but feared his ego. And tonight, Victor believed he owned the room. What he didn't know was that fate had already entered through the side doors. Her name was Monica Hayes, dressed in a simple dark suit. She didn't arrive with cameras or bodyguards. No flashing jewelry. No dramatic entrance. Just quiet confidence. Most people ignored her. Victor judged her. And that was his first mistake. Because while the billionaire laughed with wealthy friends and celebrated his influence, he had no idea that Monica carried something far more valuable than status. She carried a decision. A single signature. A signature tied to a $1 billion deal. A partnership Victor desperately needed to save his struggling empire. But Victor never asked who she was. He never asked her name. Instead, he mocked her, insulted her, and in front of an entire ballroom filled with elite guests, he deliberately knocked food onto her clothes and laughed while others watched in silence. Some people looked away. Others stayed quiet, because nobody challenged Victor Langston. Nobody. But what happened next shocked everyone. The woman he expected to cry didn't. The woman he expected to leave stayed. And the stranger he thought was powerless smiled, not with fear, not with weakness, but with a calm smile that made the billionaire uncomfortable for the very first time. Because sometimes the loudest people in the room are hiding the weakest character. And sometimes the person you disrespect today may hold your future tomorrow. So what happened when Victor finally discovered the truth? What did the billionaire do when he realized a woman he humiliated was the CEO behind the billion-dollar deal his company desperately needed? Did Monica forgive him? Or did one cruel moment destroy everything he spent his life building? Stay with me until the end, because this story is not just about money. It's about arrogance, respect, and the exact moment a billionaire's smile died forever. Welcome to Midnight Stories, where shocking secrets, powerful emotions, and unforgettable revenge stories come alive. Here, every smile hides a truth, and every betrayal has a price. So dim the lights, stay till the end, and prepare for stories that will leave your heart racing. This is Midnight Stories. One cruel laugh, one careless act, and before the night was over, a billionaire would realize he had just made the most expensive mistake of his life. Rain poured over downtown Chicago, like silver lines falling from the dark sky. The city glowed beneath the storm, its skyscrapers shining with wealth and power. Luxury cars lined the entrance of the famous Grand Crescent Hotel, where cameras flashed and security guards controlled the arrival of elite guests. Tonight was no ordinary gathering. The Grand Crescent was hosting one of the most exclusive charity galas in the country, a private evening attended by billionaires, politicians, investors, and powerful business leaders. Invitations were nearly impossible to get. Inside, the ballroom looked like something from another world. Massive crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, scattering golden light across polished marble floors. Soft classical music floated through the air, while servers dressed in black and white uniforms carried silver trays filled with expensive drinks and gourmet appetizers. Every corner of the room carried luxury. Guests wore designer suits and glittering jewelry worth more than most homes. Laughter mixed with quiet business conversations as powerful people shook hands and made secret deals behind polished smiles. But among all those wealthy faces, one man stood above the rest: Victor Langston. At 58 years old, Victor had built a global empire through real estate, energy investments, and ruthless business decisions. Financial magazines called him brilliant. Others called him dangerous. Victor enjoyed both titles. Tall, silver-haired, and dressed in a custom black tuxedo, he moved through the ballroom like a king walking through his palace. People greeted him carefully, eager for his approval. Victor loved attention. He loved power. And most of all, he loved reminding people that he had both. Near the center of the ballroom, Victor stood surrounded by wealthy investors and socialites, holding a glass of imported wine. "You know what separates winners from everyone else?" he asked loudly. His guests leaned closer. Victor smirked. Fearlessness. A man beside him nodded quickly. "Absolutely." Victor continued, enjoying the audience. "Most people waste their lives worrying about opinions. I stopped caring decades ago." The group laughed politely. One woman praised his latest business acquisition, while another congratulated him on recent magazine covers. Victor accepted every compliment like oxygen, yet behind his confident smile hid pressure few understood. His company faced serious financial problems. A risky overseas development project had begun collapsing, costing millions every month. Only one agreement could save it: a massive partnership with Horizon Dynamics, a fast-growing technology corporation whose innovations could rescue Victor's struggling expansion. The deal was worth nearly $1 billion. And tonight, final discussions were expected. Victor felt confident. He assumed success was inevitable. After all, who would reject Victor Langston? Across the ballroom, another guest entered quietly through the side entrance. Unlike the glamorous arrivals at the front doors, she attracted little attention. Her name was Monica Hayes. She wore a dark navy suit, professional but simple, and carried herself with calm confidence. Her hair was neatly tied back, and she wore almost no jewelry. At first glance, she looked more like a corporate consultant than one of the most powerful women in American business. That was intentional. Monica disliked unnecessary attention. She believed true influence didn't need to announce itself. At 39, Monica had built Horizon Dynamics from a small technology startup into an international company worth billions. Her leadership style was calm, strategic, and deeply respected, but few people at the gala recognized her face. Unlike Victor, Monica rarely appeared in celebrity magazines or television interviews. She preferred results over publicity. And tonight, she had arrived early for a reason. Before final negotiations began, she wanted a quiet moment to observe the environment and perhaps learn something about the people she would soon partner with. As Monica stepped deeper into the ballroom, she noticed the luxury surrounding her: the polished smiles, the expensive fashion, the carefully performed confidence. She had seen rooms like this many times, and she knew appearances could be deceiving. A hotel employee greeted her politely. "Welcome, ma'am." "Thank you," Monica replied warmly. She checked the time. Still early. The executive meeting would begin soon. Until then, she decided to avoid the crowded center of the ballroom and move toward the buffet area along the far side of the hall. The buffet stretched across a long decorated table beneath soft lighting. World-class chefs had prepared everything, from seafood and imported cheeses to elegant desserts arranged like artwork. Monica smiled politely at the staff and selected a small plate of food. Nothing extravagant, just enough to eat while waiting. As she stepped away from the table, she glanced toward the ballroom. That was when she noticed Victor Langston. He stood surrounded by admirers, laughing loudly while speaking with dramatic confidence. Monica had read about him. His business reputation was impressive, but his personal reputation, less so. She quietly looked away. Meanwhile, across the room, Victor's eyes wandered through the crowd. And then he noticed Monica. His gaze paused. He didn't recognize her. All he saw was a woman in simple clothing, standing alone at an elite event. Victor tilted his head slightly. A faint smile appeared, the kind of smile that usually meant trouble. He leaned toward his friends. "Interesting," he muttered. His eyes remained fixed on Monica, and without knowing it, both of their nights were about to change forever. The ballroom buzzed with laughter and expensive conversations as the charity gala continued around them. Soft violin music floated through the air while waiters moved carefully between guests carrying crystal glasses and silver trays. Near the buffet area, Monica Hayes stood quietly with her plate, hoping to enjoy a few peaceful moments before the business meeting began. She preferred observing people rather than joining loud conversations. From where she stood, she could see groups of investors exchanging business cards and wealthy couples posing for photographs beneath the glowing chandeliers. To many people, the room looked perfect, but Monica had spent enough years in business to understand something important. Luxury often had ugly truths. She slowly reached for her glass of water when she felt eyes watching her. Across the ballroom, Victor Langston had not looked away. The billionaire stood with several investors, his expression filled with amusement. One of his friends noticed. "Who are you staring at?" the man asked. Victor lifted his wine glass slightly. "That woman by the buffet." The group glanced toward Monica. A woman wearing diamonds frowned. "Do we know her?" Victor shrugged. "I don't." He smirked. "But she looks lost." The others laughed softly. Victor had always enjoyed making quick judgments about people. To him, appearance revealed status, and Monica's modest clothing instantly placed her, in his mind, below everyone else. Without another thought, Victor began walking toward her. His friends followed, curious and entertained. Meanwhile, Monica remained unaware of what was coming. She checked a message from one of her executives, confirming that the Horizon Dynamics legal team had arrived downstairs. Everything remained on schedule. Good. She slipped her phone away and turned, only to find Victor standing directly in front of her. His group formed a loose circle behind him. For a moment, Monica simply looked at him calmly. Victor smiled, not kindly, more like a man enjoying private amusement. "Good evening," he said. Monica nodded politely. "Good evening." Victor glanced toward the ballroom entrance and then back at her. "Private event tonight." His tone carried fake friendliness. Monica sensed the direction immediately. "Yes," she replied. "Very private." Victor folded his arms. "And guests are usually invited." A few people nearby turned toward them. Monica kept her expression calm. "I am invited." Victor tilted his head. "Really?" He looked her up and down in a way that made several nearby guests uncomfortable. "That surprises me." His friends chuckled. Monica felt the insult but refused to react emotionally. Years of leadership had taught her patience. Some people tested others to feel powerful. Victor clearly enjoyed such games. She decided not to encourage him. "I'm here for a meeting," she said. Victor raised an eyebrow. "With who?" "That's private." The answer irritated him. Victor was used to control, used to people answering immediately. Instead, this woman remained calm and distant. His ego disliked that. A wealthy investor beside him laughed. "Maybe she's waiting for security." More laughter. Victor smiled wider. "You know," he said loudly, "hotel management should really verify invitations more carefully." The comment carried through the nearby crowd. People began paying attention. Monica noticed faces turning. Whispers started. Still, she stayed composed. "I don't think that will be necessary," she replied. Victor pretended to study her suit. Simple, professional, not designer enough for his taste. He shook his head dramatically. You don't exactly blend with the crowd. Monica met his gaze. I didn't come here to blend in. That answer surprised him. His smile thinned. The woman standing before him wasn't intimidated. If anything, she looked bored. And Victor hated feeling ignored. His friend sensed tension growing. One whispered, "Let it go, Victor." But Victor had already decided to continue. He stepped slightly closer. "So," he said, "which company are you with?" Monica hesitated, not because she feared answering, but because she saw no reason to explain herself. That information will come out soon enough. Victor laughed loudly. "Oh, mysterious too?" His group joined him. Several nearby guests exchanged uncomfortable looks. Some clearly disapproved, but none interfered. Victor Langston's influence made people cautious. Monica noticed this, and she understood exactly what was happening. He believed power protected him. He believed wealth excused disrespect. The realization disappointed her. She had hoped the rumors about Victor's arrogance were exaggerated. Apparently not. Victor glanced at the plate in her hands. A sudden mischievous expression crossed his face. Then he said loudly enough for others to hear, "Well, at least you found the buffet." His friends burst into laughter. Monica remained still. The room felt tighter now. More eyes watched. More whispers spread. Victor expected embarrassment, an apology, maybe even retreat. Instead, Monica calmly took a sip of water. That quiet confidence irritated him further. He leaned closer. "You know," he said, "this event attracts serious people." Monica answered softly, "I'm aware." Victor's smile sharpened. "Then perhaps you should leave before security asks questions." The words hung heavily between them. For a brief moment, silence filled the space. Then Victor made his move. With fake clumsiness and deliberate force, he bumped his shoulder into Monica. Everything happened instantly. Her plate flew sideways. Food crashed across her navy jacket and scattered onto the polished marble floor. A glass slipped from her hand and shattered. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Music seemed to disappear. And then Victor laughed. A loud, cruel laugh. His friends joined in. "Well," Victor said between laughs, "looks like dinner didn't survive." Some guests looked horrified. Others avoided eye contact. The hotel staff rushed forward. But Monica stood perfectly still. Food stained her suit. Sauce dripped onto floor. And before her stood a billionaire smiling proudly at his own cruelty. The shattered glass sparkled across the marble floor. Conversations around the ballroom had nearly stopped. Only moments earlier, the Grand Crescent Hotel had been filled with laughter and elegant music. Now a heavy silence hung over the room like storm clouds. At the center of it all stood Monica Hayes. Her navy jacket was stained with food, sauce dripping down the sleeve while fragments of broken glass rested near her shoes. And directly across from her, Victor Langston stood smiling, or at least trying to. His wealthy friends chuckled nervously beside him, though their laughter sounded weaker now. Victor expected outrage. He expected embarrassment, maybe tears. Most people reacted emotionally after public humiliation. But Monica did something he never predicted. She remained calm. A young hotel employee hurried forward carrying napkins, his face pale with panic. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry," he said quickly. His hands trembled as he looked at the ruined clothing. This should never have happened. Monica looked at him kindly. "It's all right," she said softly. The employee blinked in surprise. He had expected anger directed at the staff. Instead, she thanked him and accepted the napkins. Around them, guests whispered quietly. Some looked uncomfortable. Others watched with guilty curiosity. A few wealthy socialites who had laughed earlier now suddenly found their drinks very interesting. Nobody wanted attention. Nobody wanted conflict. And certainly, nobody wanted to stand against Victor Langston. Victor folded his arms confidently. "No hard feelings," he said with fake charm. He pointed casually toward Monica's stained jacket. "Maybe next time wear something a little more expensive." A few of his companions laughed again, eager to stay on his good side, but their laughter felt forced. Monica calmly wiped sauce from her sleeve. She took her time. No rushed movements. No visible anger. That patience irritated Victor more than shouting ever could. He wanted reaction. He wanted proof of control. Instead, she treated the incident like an inconvenience. Finally, Monica looked up. Her eyes met his, and she spoke quietly. Money buys many things. Victor smirked and lifted his wine glass. Exactly. But Monica continued. Unfortunately, class is one of them. The words landed like ice. Instantly, the nearby laughter died. A sharp silence cut through the ballroom. Victor's smile stiffened. His friends looked at one another. Several guests visibly froze. Nobody, absolutely nobody, spoke to Victor Langston that way, especially not publicly. Victor lowered his glass. For the first time that evening, his expression darkened. "You've got confidence," he said coldly. Monica folded the used napkin. "And you've got arrogance." A soft gasp escaped from somewhere in the crowd. The tension became impossible to ignore. Victor stepped closer. He was taller than Monica, and he clearly intended the movement as intimidation. "I think you're forgetting who you're talking to." Monica held his gaze. "No," she said calmly. "I'm learning." The answer struck harder than Victor expected. He felt heat rising beneath his collar. Normally, people backed down. They apologized. They feared consequences. But Monica looked at him with complete calm, as if his wealth and reputation meant nothing. That unsettled him. His pride demanded control. "You should leave," Victor said, voice tightening, "before you embarrass yourself further." Monica looked down briefly at her stained jacket, then back at him. Something about her calm expression made the room feel strangely quiet. "I don't embarrass easily," she replied. Victor's jaw tightened. His friends shifted awkwardly. One investor whispered under his breath, "Victor, forget it." But Victor ignored him. He hated losing social battles, especially in front of witnesses. Monica reached into her purse. Victor watched closely. The crowd watched too. For a moment, some guests assumed she would pull out an invitation or business credentials to defend herself. Instead, she removed her phone. Victor laughed. "Well," he said loudly, "calling someone to rescue you?" His group chuckled again. But Monica never looked away from him. She unlocked her phone and calmly typed a short message. Just one. Then she placed the phone back inside her purse. "No," she said. Victor raised an eyebrow. "No, I was informing my team." Something about her tone made the words feel heavier than expected. Victor laughed again to hide his discomfort. "Good idea," he said. "Maybe they can explain the dress code." A few guests laughed weakly, but now the mood had changed. The crowd no longer sounded entertained. They sounded uncertain. Monica remained perfectly composed. Her calmness began affecting the room itself. People who had initially seen her as powerless now looked closer. Who was this woman? Why wasn't she intimidated? And why did she seem so certain? Victor noticed the shifting atmosphere. He didn't like it. He moved even closer. "Tell me something," he said. "If you knew who I was, would you still be talking this way?" Monica answered without hesitation. "If I knew who you were," she said softly, "I would have expected better." The sentence hit him harder than he wanted to admit, not because it was loud, but because it carried disappointment instead of fear. Victor opened his mouth to reply, but before he could speak, movement near the ballroom entrance caught attention. 3 sharply dressed executives had entered the room. They looked serious, urgent. Each checked their phones while scanning the crowd. Monica noticed them immediately. Victor didn't. Not yet. The executives exchanged quick whispers and started moving through the ballroom with purpose. Meanwhile, Victor still focused on Monica. "You're making a mistake," he warned. Monica looked toward the approaching men, then calmly back at him. "No," she said. Her voice remained steady. "I think the mistake has already been made." Victor frowned. He didn't understand. But within moments, the entire ballroom would. The tension in the ballroom felt heavy enough to touch. Guests stood frozen around the buffet area, pretending to continue conversations while secretly watching the confrontation unfold. Broken glass had already been cleared away, but the uncomfortable silence remained. At the center of it stood Victor Langston and Monica Hayes. Victor still believed he controlled the situation. Even after her sharp words, he assumed this would end the way most conflicts did around him, with the other person backing down. But something felt different, and he was beginning to notice it. Across the ballroom, the three executives who had just entered moved quickly through the crowd. They wore tailored suits and carried leather folders marked with a silver logo of Horizon Dynamics. Their expressions looked serious, urgent. One of them checked his phone again before scanning the room. Then he spotted Monica. His face changed instantly. "There she is," he said quietly. The three executives immediately headed toward her. Meanwhile, Victor remained unaware. He still focused entirely on Monica. "You talk boldly," he said with a thin smile. "But confidence without status usually ends badly." Monica looked at him calmly. "And arrogance with status?" she asked. Victor laughed. "That depends on who holds the power." Nearby guests exchanged nervous glances. Some sense the conversation was no longer entertainment. It was becoming something else, something dangerous. Monica noticed the approaching executives, but said nothing. Instead, she studied Victor carefully. His expensive watch, his practiced smile, his certainty that money placed him above consequences. She had encountered men like him before, people who confused influence with character, people who treated kindness as weakness, and people who only respected power once they recognized it. Victor folded his arms. "You still haven't answered my question." "Which one? Who invited you?" The question carried mockery. Monica glanced toward the ballroom entrance again. Then she answered quietly, "You'll know soon." Victor smirked. "Oh, dramatic too?" His friends laughed weakly. But the laughter ended almost immediately, because at that exact moment, the executives arrived. The first man, tall and gray-haired, approached Monica with visible relief. "Ms. Hayes," he said respectfully. The ballroom froze. Victor blinked. For a second, he thought he had heard incorrectly. The executive continued, "We've been looking everywhere for you." Monica nodded. "I needed a moment." The second executive stepped forward, holding a leather portfolio. "The board members are already upstairs," he said carefully. Legal completed the revised acquisition documents. A ripple moved through the crowd. People nearby looked confused. Victor frowned. "Ms. Hayes? Board members? Acquisition documents?" Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Victor looked at Monica again, this time more carefully. The third executive noticed the stains on her jacket. His expression hardened. "Ma'am, what happened?" Monica remained calm. "An accident." Victor forced a laugh. "Yes," he said quickly. "Unfortunate misunderstanding." But the executives were no longer paying attention to him. Their concern remained entirely focused on Monica. The gray-haired executive spoke again. "The Horizon Dynamics team is waiting to finalize once you approve." The name hit the room like thunder. Horizon Dynamics. Conversations stopped completely. Several investors visibly stiffened. A woman near the champagne table gasped. Victor felt his stomach tighten. No, that couldn't be right. His company had spent nearly 8 months negotiating with Horizon Dynamics. The partnership represented survival. Without Horizon's technology support, his international development project would collapse under growing losses. And the CEO, his mind raced. He stared at Monica. Suddenly memories returned. Articles, business headlines, magazine covers he barely studied. A name, a company, a woman known for avoiding publicity. His confidence cracked. Slowly, painfully, reality arrived. "You," Victor whispered. Monica met his eyes. "Yes." The single word drained color from his face. The crowd began whispering rapidly. "Oh my God! That's Monica Hayes? She's the CEO?" "No way." The atmosphere changed instantly. Moments earlier, Monica had been viewed as an outsider. Now the room looked at her differently. Respect replaced curiosity. and embarrassment spread across faces that had laughed with Victor. His wealthy friends suddenly stepped farther away. Nobody wanted association with what had just happened. Victor struggled to recover. His mind searched desperately for control. This couldn't be happening. Not tonight. Not with this deal. He forced a smile that looked painfully unnatural. "Ms. Hayes," he said carefully. His voice had changed completely. Gone was the mockery. Gone was the arrogance. Only nervous politeness remained. "I didn't realize who you were." Monica looked down at the stain still covering her jacket. Then she looked back at him. "No," she said quietly. That much was obvious. The sentence cut through him. A few guests lowered their eyes. Victor swallowed. He suddenly became aware of how many people were watching. Dozens, maybe hundreds, and for the first time in years, Victor Langston felt exposed. The gray-haired executive looked toward Monica. "Should we proceed upstairs?" Before she answered, Victor stepped forward. His pulse had quickened. The billion-dollar agreement stood directly in front of him, and so did disaster. "Ms. Hayes," he said quickly, "if I may—" Monica waited. Victor struggled to steady himself. He knew one thing with frightening certainty. The woman he had mocked, the woman he had humiliated, was holding the future of his company in her hands. And suddenly, the ballroom no longer felt like his kingdom. The ballroom stood in complete silence. Only minutes earlier, laughter had filled the Grand Crescent Hotel. Glasses had clinked, music had floated through the air, and powerful guests had moved confidently beneath the crystal chandeliers. Now everything felt different. The atmosphere had changed so quickly that people almost forgot they were attending a charity gala. All eyes remained fixed on Victor Langston and Monica Hayes. Victor could feel those eyes. And for perhaps the first time in his career, he hated being the center of attention. His confidence, once effortless, had begun slipping away. The woman standing before him, the same woman he had mocked, insulted, and humiliated, was not an ordinary guest. She was the CEO of Horizon Dynamics, the woman whose signature could save his collapsing billion-dollar project. Victor forced himself to breathe. He had spent decades surviving brutal negotiations and financial disasters. He knew how to recover from mistakes. Or at least, he thought he did. The executives beside Monica waited quietly, holding the acquisition documents. No one interrupted. No one moved. Victor stepped forward, trying to rebuild the image that had cracked moments earlier. "Ms. Hayes," he said carefully, his voice suddenly softer, "please allow me to apologize." The words sounded strange coming from him. Many guests noticed. Victor rarely apologized. In fact, some people in the room had never heard him say the word. Monica looked at him calmly. Her stained jacket remained untouched, almost like silent evidence of everything that had happened. Victor glanced at it and immediately looked away. This was, he said, searching for language, clearly an unfortunate misunderstanding. The sentence hung in the air. Monica studied him without speaking. Nearby, his wealthy friend stood awkwardly silent. Only minutes earlier they had laughed beside him. Now they avoided eye contact. Nobody rushed to support him. Nobody defended his behavior. Powerful friendships, Victor realized, often disappeared when embarrassment arrived. He forced another smile. "I admit," he continued, "I handled things poorly." One of Monica's executives looked unimpressed. But Monica remained unreadable. Victor pressed forward. "I had no idea who you were." Monica's expression barely changed. Then she asked quietly, "If I were not Monica Hayes, would you still apologize?" The question struck him harder than expected. Victor hesitated, only for a second, but that second felt endless. The ballroom noticed, because deep down, he knew the truth. If she had been an unknown guest, if she truly had no influence, he probably would have walked away laughing. His silence answered for him. Monica gave a small nod. I understand. Victor's stomach tightened. No, he said quickly. That's not what I meant. But Monica gently interrupted him. You don't regret what happened. Her voice stayed calm. You regret discovering who it happened to. The words landed with brutal precision. Several guests looked visibly uncomfortable. Victor felt heat climb into his face. He hated this feeling, hated losing control. Yet every attempt to fix the situation seemed to make it worse. Monica, he began. She looked directly at him. Do you know something interesting, Mr. Langston? Victor stayed silent. You never asked my name. The room became even quieter. Monica continued. You never introduce yourself. She glanced around the ballroom. And you never question whether your assumptions might be wrong. Victor swallowed. Each sentence felt heavier than the last. The crowd listened carefully. Nobody whispered now. Nobody checked phones. The entire ballroom had become an audience. Monica's executive holding the contract folder spoke carefully. Ms. Hayes, legal is waiting upstairs. She nodded slightly but kept her attention on Victor. He noticed the folder, a dark leather portfolio, carrying nearly $1 billion in opportunity. His chest tightened. This deal meant survival. For months his investors had pressured him. The overseas expansion had become a nightmare of delays and financial losses. Banks were growing impatient. Shareholders demanded solutions. Without Horizon Dynamics, his company faced disaster. And suddenly that disaster stood only inches away. Victor made one final attempt. Please, he said. His voice sounded different now. Less powerful, almost desperate. I made a mistake. Monica looked at him quietly. Yes, she said. You did. He shook his head. I'm asking for another chance. One of her executives shifted slightly but remained silent. Victor continued. We're both business people. His breathing grew tighter. Surely we can move forward professionally. Monica studied him for several seconds. Then she looked down at the food stains on her jacket. The room waited. Her answer mattered, not only to Victor, but to everyone watching. Finally, Monica spoke. Professionalism, she said softly, begins with respect. Victor opened his mouth, but she continued. You judged me before hearing a single word about me. She looked toward the crowd. And you humiliated someone you believed had no power. The sentence cut through the ballroom. People lowered their eyes. Some guests who had laughed earlier now looked ashamed. Victor felt trapped inside his own public failure. Monica turned toward her executives. Status of the agreement? The gray-haired executive answered immediately, ready for signature. Victor's pulse jumped. Hope flickered. Maybe she would still sign. Maybe this would still be saved. Money solved most problems. Influence solved the rest. But then Monica extended her hand. The executive placed the contract folder into it. Victor watched every movement. His future sat inside that leather folder. The ballroom barely breathed. And as Monica slowly looked down at the documents, Victor realized something terrifying. For the first time that night, he was no longer negotiating from power. The ballroom stood motionless beneath the glowing chandeliers. No music, no laughter, only silence. In the center of that silence stood Monica Hayes, holding the leather contract folder that carried nearly $1 billion in opportunity. And standing across from her, Victor Langston. For the first time in years, the billionaire looked uncertain. His polished confidence had disappeared beneath visible tension. The same man who had mocked and humiliated Monica only minutes earlier now watched her hands with nervous desperation. His future rested inside that folder. Around them, wealthy guests remained frozen like statues. Nobody dared interrupt. Even the hotel staff stood quietly near the walls, sensing they were witnessing something unforgettable. Victor cleared his throat. Monica, he said carefully. Her eyes lifted toward him. I know the night started badly. He forced a weak smile. But people make mistakes. Monica remained silent. Victor continued, feeling the pressure growing. I admit my behavior was inappropriate. The words sounded rehearsed, carefully chosen, and Monica noticed. He wasn't speaking from regret. He was speaking from fear. Fear of losing money. Fear of public humiliation. Fear of consequences. Victor looked around the room, suddenly aware of how exposed he had become. Only minutes earlier, these same people admired him. Now, many watched with quiet judgment. He hated that feeling, but losing the deal terrified him more. "Please," he said again. His voice softened. "Our companies have worked too hard to let one misunderstanding destroy everything." Monica looked at the contract folder in her hands. The leather edges reflected ballroom light. Inside were months of negotiations, research, legal reviews, strategic planning. She understood the importance of the agreement. This was not a small decision. Horizon Dynamics would benefit financially. Her board supported the partnership. And yet, business was never only about numbers. Not to her. Monica slowly closed the folder. The sound echoed softly through the room. Victor felt his stomach drop. "No," he said quietly. Monica looked directly at him. "I built Horizon Dynamics from nothing," she said. Her voice remained calm but carried quiet strength. "There were years when people ignored me because I was young." She paused. "Years when they doubted me because I was a woman." Several guests listened carefully. Some lowered their eyes. Monica continued, "And sometimes because of the color of my skin." The ballroom remained painfully silent. Victor said nothing. He could not. "I learned something during those years," she said. "Respect reveals character." Her fingers rested against the closed folder. "And disrespect reveals it even faster." Victor felt his chest tighten. "Monica, please." She interrupted gently. "You looked at me and made a decision before knowing anything about me." Victor opened his mouth, closed it again, because he knew she was right. "You saw simple clothing," she said. "You saw someone standing alone." Her voice stayed steady. "And you assumed weakness." The sentence cut through him. Around the room, guests shifted uncomfortably. The memory still lingered. The laughter, the spilled food, the public humiliation. Victor rubbed his hands together. His confidence had completely vanished now. "That wasn't my intention," he said. Monica held his gaze. "Intentions matter." She paused. "But actions matter more." The billionaire looked toward the executives standing beside her, then back to the contract. His breathing felt heavier. He imagined headlines: investor panic, boardroom outrage. Without Horizon Dynamics, his overseas project would collapse. The financial damage alone could be catastrophic. But worse, his reputation could suffer. And Victor valued reputation almost as much as money. He took another step forward. "I'm asking for a chance to fix this." Monica considered him for several seconds. The room waited. Then she asked softly, "If I were not to sell..." Victor froze. She continued, "If I had no influence..." Her eyes never left his. "Would you still be standing here?" The question shattered whatever defense he had left. He could not answer, because deep down, he already knew. His silence filled the ballroom. Monica nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." Victor looked defeated. And for the first time that evening, people saw not a billionaire, but simply a man trapped by his own choices. Monica turned toward her executives. The gray-haired executive waited carefully. Her decision had arrived. She handed him the folder. Victor's eyes widened. Hope flickered desperately inside him. Maybe she was finally ready to proceed. Maybe this nightmare could still end. But Monica's next words changed everything. "Cancel the deal." The ballroom seemed to stop breathing. The executive blinked. "Ma'am!" "You heard me." Her voice remained calm. "Terminate negotiations with Langston Global." A wave of shock spread through the room. Victor stared at her. His face drained the color. "No, wait." Panic entered his voice. "Monica, please." But she continued speaking. "I do not build partnerships with people who treat others with disrespect." Her words were steady, measured, and impossible to misunderstand. Victor stepped forward desperately. "You're making an emotional decision." Monica looked at him one final time. "No," she said quietly. "I'm making a leadership decision." The sentence struck harder than anger ever could. The billionaire's shoulders dropped. The reality finally settled over him. The deal, the money, the future he depended upon, was gone. Monica turned toward the ballroom exit. Her executives followed immediately. The crowd parted silently to make room. Just before reaching the doors, she stopped. Without turning around, she spoke one final sentence. Character reveals itself when you believe someone cannot fight back. Then she walked away. The doors closed behind her, and the sound echoed through the ballroom like judgment. Victor Langston remained standing beneath the chandeliers, motionless, speechless. The room no longer admired him. Nobody laughed. Nobody applauded. Some investors quietly stepped away, already checking phones and whispering to advisors. His wealthy friends disappeared into the crowd, and in that painful silence, Victor understood the true cost of arrogance. Not just money, not just business, but respect. The billionaire who laughed while dumping food on a stranger had lost far more than $1 billion deal. He had lost the illusion that power could protect him from consequences. And for the first time that night, his smile was gone.